No, he's setting it up now.
Oh, okay. So even if it was there, it would still be, they would be in the process of setting stuff up, right?
If y'all were here,
Right, they would still be
Yeah.
setting up.
yeah.
And Max said it was in.
Nowhere to park.
How's the turnout in person?
Me,
Yeah.
Karen, and Max.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I wanted to come, but I couldn't make it in today.
Okay, I got a couple of my visible friends with me too, but you know, camera can't see them.
You got a couple of what?
Of my visible friends with me, but the camera can't see.
Nice.
Did anybody notice bugs in the movie app?
Is the TV on?
Well,
Hold on, my water is boiling.
What kind of bugs?
I found a couple. If it would allow me to select a chair that was already selected. I mean, that was already occupied. So it would add money to my account, like as far as, you know, the number of tickets. It would also change the color.
So it would change from red to blue,
Well, I changed it to a different color, but yeah, whatever color you know, you use.
from occupied to selected.
Yeah, selected, it would change. So if it was red, it shouldn't change, but it would allow you to change. And then if you pick some seats and you change movies, you'll still have a total for the old seats that you picked.
Oh, really? Okay, I'm gonna try that.
Which might not be available in the other movie that you go to because the occupied seats are generated randomly. Yes, so I was able to. I think I figured out the third bug too, but I was able to fix two of them.
I mean, you have to confirm, but if you want to take it back, you probably can.
I mean, I found.
Huh.
another one, but I was like.
I'm not getting that for mine. If I like go to the Godfather and pick a seat and then go to Citizen Kane.
Right, stay at Godfather.
Okay,
pick a seat.
Yep, pick a seat.
Okay, how much is your value now?
$8.
All right, pick the occupied seat.
No, it's not. It's not letting me pick an occupied seat.
So it's not. Is it adding to your account?
Nope, it's not adding to the number.
Okay, maybe the way my thing was set up then, but that was interesting. Maybe it was the way mine was set up then. But then I would, if I picked a few movies and then change to the next movie screen, I would still have whatever. It would change to the different value. So let's say one movie was $30, 10 a piece, and I switched to an $11 movie, then it would update and say, hey, you have $33 worth of movies. But you know, I didn't necessarily have any seats selected. So maybe it was just the way I wrote my code. I don't know.
Oh, so it was still saving the 3 seats. Well,
Right.
So with my code, the part where it creates all the icons,
Yeah.
and the way Max showed us to set it up, like every time you change something, it recreates all the icons so that it'll, based on the information, it'll turn them red or blue or whatever, and it'll know who's selected and who's not and add your totals. So I tried to do it without recreating the seats, which because I thought, oh, that seems like a lot of work for it to do every time, but it ended up being so many more lines of code. So I think that was the more efficient way, but maybe that's why, because I didn't start with the original way to do it, maybe that's why I didn't get those bugs.
Okay. Anybody else try running theirs to see if they got the same bugs? Because it could have just been totally the way I did mine, but I would kind of follow. Well, I basically follow what we did in class. So
2 minutes away from starting class. We're almost there.
We already started, Max.
Okay. Zoom. No, it only works though.
Well, now I did it. What? It's not shared, it's probably sharing your Wi-Fi.
Oh, I canceled the one back in. Let me try it one more time.
All right, my bad, Larry. You're saying is letting you select the occupied, the ones that's already occupied seating, and is adding money to it.
Yes. Does
Yes,
that have
mine was doing the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not just you. Like I just went through and did it. I had to find it. Sorry, that's why I didn't respond to it. I didn't want you to think you're just being ignored.
Sorry. Me and Doug was having a conversation. I was like, oh, I guess maybe nobody else want to have it.
No, I'm sorry. I had so much stuff opened up on my daggone laptop. I was like, 1 second.
Thank you.
I guess I'm gonna.
Y'all can hear me, right?
Yeah, Chaz.
Yes.
Yeah, what's up with Max?
He's here. He's trying to get his stuff set up. Yeah, you.
They are in person and we are at home.
Oh,
We do a whole lot of eating.
That part.
Where do you go when you're in a city?
So since we're all going in tomorrow, do we want to all bring a dish and have like a
Oh, no. I like sugar too much, sis.
little mini
I like
something?
sugar. I like oil. I like olive oil. That's not alkaline. Okay.
What is it called when you have a party at
I
work?
like bacon.
Potluck.
Alkaline bacon.
I have potluck
No
tomorrow?
vegan alkaline bacon. They can't do that.
Uh,
I can't do alkaline. I'll be looking at it. I try alkaline water.
Yes, no, maybe.
I don't know.
Try alkaline. It tastes like piss.
Okay, never mind.
I don't understand what's so important about it.
Zach likes the idea.
I mean, I'm with it, but I'm too busy and I ain't gonna be able to participate. I don't wanna. I gotta work.
Larry,
So I'm afraid I'm not gonna be able to make it in tomorrow either, and then I'll just miss out.
I see Karen message saying like we should check Slack, but it's not that I didn't check Slack, but we had agreed already in a poll that we was going remote completely. So I just
Oh, I used the Jabber.
stayed
When did
remote.
we agree to that?
Like we like completely agreed that we was just completely staying remote. So we didn't really take a poll saying that we was going back in person. So I just assumed that we still had that option to stay home.
No, he was trying to see, but I don't think he really
Yeah.
appreciated.
I remember that poll too.
Right. So the one like staying home was the poll that we won that poll to stay home. We didn't re-vote to go back. So when he put it in Slack, I seen it, but I didn't think that was a requirement to come into class today.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay, so sorry for the delay. This is the first time I've had to commute for work for 5 years, I think. So little underestimated the time it would take there. First things first, message that I sent was at 9:28 yesterday, where I said, I'll be in person. We're still doing hybrid, and then we can decide how we want to proceed for tomorrow. So don't panic that most of you are all remote. That's not a big deal. With that said, the more important thing is that you scroll down to the poll that I sent at 2:06 today and have everyone participate in that, because that is how we're going to be deciding about how we are proceeding for tomorrow and beyond. So I personally prefer to teach fully virtually. So I kind of lean into that, but there was a reason I moved back to upstate New York, and that was to make sure that teaching in person was an option. So whatever you guys decide is okay. If it comes down to a tie, we will probably lean back towards fully virtual with the option of coming into Common Space if you want. But that is up to you guys. I'm going to drop a link to the poll in the chat so you guys can get to it a little bit easier if you're not signed into Zoom. Only 3 or 4 of you have voted in it so far. So please vote because that's going to determine where we go from here.
Wait, so are you here now? Like for good?
I am here. I have closed on my house as of Friday and moved all of my stuff in as of Saturday. So I am permanently in the area. If you thought you could get rid of me before, that is no longer an option.
Well, congratulations. I didn't know that.
Thank you. It has been quite the move, and my iPad, of course, just died on me, so I'm moving that over. Okay, so agenda for today, I did not do an outline. I will do one during the break just so we have it documented. We're going to go over the movie app. Some of you guys said you had some questions or bugs, and there are probably bugs that we left in the code that we need to resolve on our own. So a good note for those projects is that they probably, the goal of those projects is not to get them bug free, it's to get the concepts across, right? So it's not just a matter of updating your code to have some additional styling. Put your own twist on that, and then also continue working on these projects, right? The main goal is that you can show them off, or at least show next steps of like, hey, I didn't fully finish this project, but here's what I got done, and be able to document that on your portfolio site. So before we dive into any code tonight, we're going to take some time, go through the movie app, talk about bugs, talk about how to solve them. And then next steps from there are we are going to go back to our weather app all the way back from week, what was that, week 4, week 3? It's going to take me a minute to find it. But we're going to go in and we're going to layer in our JavaScript into that. And that's a very common thing to do in the workplace, right? Is to be handed a project, have the front end dev all done, and say, hey, go use some JavaScript, go make this interactive, go make it do something else. So we're going to touch on the weather app tonight. And then we are going to switch over to making tic-tac-toe work. So we're going to build our interface tonight, and we're going to lay the groundwork for tic-tac-toe, and then we're going to go from there. Before we dive into movie theater app, though, let's touch on what we learned last week. How did it go with Latonia? How are we feeling? What did we learn? What are we looking forward to this week? All of that good stuff.
So it went good with Latonia. I liked she gave us the sheet, and then she went back and referenced some things. And I was actually saying to her, like, because it was structured, she kind of had a format of what she wanted to go over, and it was helpful to revisit some things. I was saying to her, it would be nice if we could have that for like office hours where we go back and just kind of touch on some little things. I don't know if you saw her outline, but because she had, maybe we could have a visiting TA or something and like that. That was very good because it was structured. So it wasn't kind of like, oh, what about this? What about this? It was, she showed us a lot of things. So that was good. Let's still
Crazy.
plugging along with this with the JavaScript,
So,
having
so,
some aha moments.
so the cops just knocked on my door a while ago. There's a dog stuck in my backyard. I'm like, what do you guys want? Oh, there's a dog stuck in your backyard, sir. Can we go back there? Yeah, I'm in class. Bye. That's funny.
Yeah, so I would say definitely definitely bring your questions to office hours. There is nothing wrong with using office hours to revisit topics. And the other thing I can say is feel free to send me topics of like, hey, I would love for a 30-minute video that's just a recap of intro to HTML, right? Because it is a lot to go back through all the classes. And even though you rewatch a class, it may not be at the speed or the pace or the specific topic that you're looking for. So in addition to office hours, which are totally fine to go back and review, even if it's not for that week, send me ideas of like, hey, this is the concept that I'm struggling with. I would love to revisit that. And that's definitely something that I can put together a video on, or we can touch on the one-on-ones, right? So that's true, especially for topics where if you talk to a couple students and everyone seems to be struggling on that topic, definitely let me know and I'll find a way to just do a quick video blurb that's hopefully a good recap and a good review of all of that stuff. So excellent points. And I reviewed Latonia's outline and all of that on the weekend actually before she came in. And I knew it was going to be a little bit of a slower pace, but I thought for where we were at in the program, that might not necessarily be a bad thing. And so I hope it was a good review, and I hope that it was inspiration for getting your capstone started as well. With all of that said, anything else from last week or up until this week? Any questions about the in-person poll or where we're headed before we dive into movie theater bugs?
Do you or Nicole remember what day she asked about the ARGs? Remember it was with the functions. And do you remember what day that was? Because I want to go back and watch the video. I was doing that today and I did it like 6 times and I still did. And I'm like, I know I saw this before. So, huh?
That was
This week or last week?
For this week, but they haven't, the recording hasn't been posted yet.
Oh, was that the one? I thought we did it at a different time.
No, it was office hours on Sunday. It was just yesterday's office hours.
With the ARGs or something?
With the arguments and the parameters, yeah.
Oh, that's crazy then. That's even crazier because I was like, I've seen this before. I just saw this, but I really couldn't. I don't know what I was doing wrong, but okay, I'll watch that when it comes up. I just wanted to ask when it happened. That's crazy.
Yep.
I was struggling with that for a very long time. So
yeah, I will get that posted along with tonight's video. So they'll be available tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Any other questions from last week before we dive into the movie theater project? Okie doke. Who wants to share their screen through whoever's having bugs or has questions about next steps?
Should I move my code from a specific day into like a new folder for week 9, day 1?
Yes, we're gonna take the movie theater, the weather project and copy that and paste it into wherever week 9, day 1. And that's where we're going to use as their starting point. And then we're also hopefully going to start the tic-tac-toe project tonight. So you may want in your day one folder, 2 separate folders, one for weather and one for tic-tac-toe.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, give me a mic.
All right.
Oh, and I've got a question battery on this one. Okay, who wants to start with their movie theater app and start talking through some bugs?
Doug.
You don't got the bug.
Larry, because
I don't
Larry
got
had
the
the
bug no
bug.
more neither, but I could talk about the bug.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah,
Go ahead and
yeah.
share your screen.
Let's see. Zoom. Share screen. Yeah. And then go to VS Code. Oh, not that. I need to go to Chrome. And all right, so initially there was a bug that would allow me to select occupied seats. So if you clicked on a red seat, it would change the color to the selected color, and then it would also add to the number of movies you had selected, and it would add to your total. There was also another bug that if I selected 3 seats on this page, or however many seats, and then I went to the next movie, so this is $24, it's $8 a movie, so I guess that's 3 movies. If I went to a $10 movie, it would say that I had $30 worth of movies down there, but no movies selected on this particular screen. I fixed that bug too.
You want to talk through what you did?
All right, so I realized that, let me go to the code. And where was that? Where we updated seats. There was somewhere where I had to figure out the status of the seat itself. So if the seat was occupied already when it was selected, I didn't want to update the seat.
Right there, you just scrolled by it. Right on.
Oh yeah. So if the seat was not occupied and it's not already selected, because that's what was happening too. If I had a seat selected already and I kept clicking on that same seat, it would increase the total as well. So I had said if the seat is not occupied and the seat is not selected, then change selected to true and then increment the number of seats.
And that is exactly, down to the letter of how I would have solved that same problem. So that is the perfect solution there. And that's pretty common, right? To build something out and you ship it out to users and users go, well, if I keep clicking on the same seat, I can select it over and over and over again. And so you go, oh, all right, well, I'll go right in that if statement and you get the bug fixed out for that. And they go, haha, now I found another bug. If you click on an occupied seat, it will set it to selected. So there are a lot of if statements of, all right, well, I didn't actually want to let you do that. So let me check that if statement and make sure that it's only happening at that same time. And then the other one that you solved is going to be in probably your on change of the select dropdown.
Yeah, so I talked to Karen about it, and then she brought up, is it based on change? And I said, yeah. And, basically when you change the movie, just clear out the number of seats that were occupied or set it to 0. And, I went and looked at Fandango, and basically once you pick the movies and you go to another screen to try to go back to different movies, they erased the seats you had already. So that was the simple fix for that.
Awesome. Any questions on either of those fixes? Because the reason I'm spending the class time on it is because this is the perfect example of not only going back in and continuing to work on the project, but Larry, if you can switch over to your Chrome, this is Larry's level of customization here is exactly what you're looking for, right?
Can I stop you there though?
Yeah, go for it.
Doug's level of customization pushed me to go to this level of customization. So I got to give credit to Doug first.
Well,
Very fair.
Yours solved the problem I had, Larry. I had mine in a black background. I just ended up putting a white box around it, but changing the colors of the seats, that works so nice.
It wouldn't let me put the white, I didn't figure out how to put the white box yet, but thank you. Strange.
Hello, welcome. Oh, you're fine. So this is like the ideal level of, hey, the concepts we're teaching tonight are, JavaScript, right? So we're not going to spend a ton of time on HTML. The interface that we're going to build for tic-tac-toe is going to look like pretty much crap, but you're going to have the opportunity to go in and style that. And the way you want to be thinking about this is, hey, when I go to an employer and interview, they're going to look at you and they're going to say, why should I hire a boot camp graduate? And you need to be able to go to the projects and say, look, I not only know JavaScript, I not only know HTML, but I can actually build a usable project here. And I can actually build something that, I could ship out or go to a local movie theater and say, hey, you don't have a website. Look, I can build an app for you that lets you pick seats and ship that out. So that is great work on there. Does anyone else have any bugs or questions on the movie theater project before we move on?
I'm gonna say that I didn't get as far as they did, but I still was left off where we had left off in class. So just for him like saying that, I just know where to go.
Cool.
Being that we didn't know we had a bug, how do we I guess just watch the beginning of this video tomorrow to find out like what we need to do? Because I heard what he was saying, but I didn't know we had a bug. I guess I didn't try to buy 3 tickets. So
So what you are talking about is an entire job title, and that is quality assurance, often abbreviated down to QA. Right. So depending on the size of the company that you're in, as the lead developer on it, you may be expected to do your own QA work, right? Of, hey, I did all of this work. I think I met all of the requirements, but now let me pretend like I didn't know how this was built and go in and try and break it. And at larger companies, when you're talking about teams of about 10 engineers or more, oftentimes there is a dedicated role for quality assurance. And so that person literally takes your software, tries to break it, and then says, hey, it's broken here. Before we can deploy this, before it goes out to the world, you've got to go in and fix these things. So that's a good note all the way back to the SDLC, right? Software development lifecycle. We're all in phase 4 right now, which is all about development. But there are multiple phases, I think 7 of them, right? The next phase after development is testing. So before you go and you put something on your portfolio site, it's worth it to put it down for 48 hours, right? Give it the weekend, give it a little time, and then come back to it. Let the code get a little rusty on you and try and use it as a user. And try and switch between movies. Try and do things that you probably shouldn't be allowed to do and see what happens. Try and unselect a seat and see if your code will let you do that. Try and select an occupied seat. Make sure that when you switch movies, the number of selected seats is accurate, right? Because there are different ways of solving those bugs, but you may not know what those bugs are until you go and you try and use the software as a user. So it's worth it to put your code down sometimes for a couple days, come back to it, test it as a user, but then also go back into the code and read through it. And if there's anything where you're like, don't really remember what this is doing, or it takes you a minute, or you got to look it up, that's the perfect time to go back in and add some comments, right? And say, oh, I now remember this was some tricky thing that Max showed me. Let me just jot down a note about that. So if I ever do come back to this code in 3 months or 6 months, I'm able to talk about it, because an employer during an interview may actually pull up one of your old projects and say, hey, I noticed there was a bug in here. How would you go about fixing it? And what you want to do is be able to go through your code and remember what that code was about. So going through, writing in comments, doing a little testing, excuse me, and then making sure that it gets up onto your portfolio is going to be huge for employers rolling forward.
Okay.
Any other questions about anything that we did before we dive back into the weather app? You guys are killing me on the poll. It is just about tied between lean towards in-person and stay fully virtual,
How many,
which are,
what's the number?
it's like polar ends of the spectrum.
So the 6 is, what's
6 for highly encourage in person and 7 for stay fully virtual. And then we've got 1 vote for keep it kind of hybrid and then none for other, because I didn't think of any other solutions there as
I
well.
already vote, because I voted earlier.
You did vote for in person.
Okay. So I'm like this, I like in person because it lets me get out of the house, but if the majority of the class wants to be remote, I'm fine with doing it remote, so it's not gonna affect my ability.
It's, I mean, we have paid for the workspace, I mean, paid for common space every other week. So we have it, but they've also told us that they can be pretty flexible in terms of like, if we don't want to use it for 2 months and then have the last 2 months of the program be fully in person, like we could also lean into that. So I'm totally flexible. It's no big deal for me to drive in. It's just a matter of like, hey, if we're only going to have 2 or 3 students in here, probably not worth it. But it looks like 6 of you are leaning towards, hey, I'm going to try and make it in person. So the other thing I want to check is watching this recording and kind of seeing how this works, other than me being 20 minutes late to kicking off class tonight. I'm curious to see like how the audio quality is like and what it is like in this hybrid solution, right? Because as someone who has worked fully remote for 5 years, I know how frustrating it is to have an in-person meeting and feel kind of inferior to the person, to the people in person. So I want to make sure that we're not having that environment where you guys like feel frustrated because you can't hear or something like that. How is it so far? Can you hear? Is it weird me being in person and you not being here?
It seems like it'll be the same for them.
Cool. Cool.
After your
Yeah,
background
it's
change.
It's weird.
It's the same.
It
you
is
just don't
weird.
have a background. That's it.
Should I turn that on? Will you guys feel more comfortable if you have the?
I need that green background.
You would not believe how many hours I spent trying to get that background working. And if you actually look really closely, there's actually a little animation in the background where the blue-green like rotates around. But I don't know that it will let me, maybe I have to stop sharing. Video, background.
So do you yourself feel more comfortable being fully virtual?
No, I'm backwards on my computer, but when it broadcasts, it's not. I've only been here for 30 minutes, so I don't really have a preference between the two. It's going to be weird when like if someone in person has a question, it's still weird because I want them to still share your screen so that like everyone can see it and work through the problem, but at the same time, like I can walk over and help you in person. So I would suggest that we try all in person tomorrow, unless you're not comfortable and want to say remote, that's fine. But I'm going to encourage everyone to try in person tomorrow, if you can make it downtown. And then we'll make the decision at the end of tomorrow's class, if that's all right with everyone.
Then you have the subtitle mouth on my screen, like the Kung Fu movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think though the speakerphone introduces a little bit of a delay, but having them be like wireless and just be able to like throw them around the room is just so convenient. So does my mouth not line up for everyone who's remote?
I can hear you, so it should line up for them, but I'm here with you in the room, so I hear it, but yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's
Your
in
lips
sync
are
on
lining
Zoom.
up.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
you're looking work.
And I am constantly told how loud I am. So if you want to bring earplugs for tomorrow's class, I am quite the loudspeaker. So I do not have any speakerphone issues. Okay, so let's dive into the movie app. I'm gonna just move some things around on my monitors here. I'm gonna put this over here. Not looking down at you guys. I am just, well, I am looking down at you guys, but not looking down on you. I just have you on the separate monitor. Okay, so first things first, I need to share my screen. See, even when I'm in person, I forget to share my screen. And put you here. Okay, and then I am going to go to my desktop. Did anyone happen to find the weather app?
Oh Lord, that's what you're supposed to be doing.
Week
I think
4?
That was like week 2.
Wouldn't it be easier to look at pandas?
Probably. I think it's week 2, day
1. Oh no.
Day 3 and 4. So I think we want.
Yep, I got day 3.
Okay, so it's week 2, day 4 is when we worked on it. And believe it or not, this is all the way back when we were just doing index.html and style.css. So I'm going to go to my desktop and my code. I'm going to create a week 9 folder. You guys believe it? We're almost a third of the way through the program. And I'm going to create a new folder in here because I'm hoping to be able to get to the tic-tac-toe project tonight. So I'm going to create another one called weather. And then I'm going to copy my index.html and my style.css. If you hold in the command button, when you click on both of them, you can select both files and then just Command C, Command V. And then in my VS Code, I'm going to file open folder. And here's a little trick for you guys. If you're in the folder in Finder and want to just jump it to over here, you can just click and drag this file in and it will move the Finder window all the way into the folder that you want. So if you go there and hit open, it's going to go ahead and pop open our index.html. And I'm going to go live on this and lament not having all of my monitors. I think I'm going to feel the pain of all of you guys. I'm going to get that over there. And then I am going to start a live share, read only, and drop that in Slack in the live stream.
Which one are we doing first, the weather or the?
We're doing weather first. Okay, so this is where we left off with weather, right? Where we've got our location up here at the top. But the objective of revisiting this app is practicing layering our JavaScript in here and also practicing structuring our data so that our data can primarily be stored in JavaScript, and then we can update our HTML based off of that. So what we are going for here is I would like to turn this location into a dropdown. And so that you'll be able to click on it, pick on a different location, and have the data update based off of whatever location we pick. So next week, Ryan Goss, who's a developer at Density, which is a local tech startup that makes a device that counts the number of people in a room. He's coming in and he's talking all about APIs. And he won't be primarily teaching how to build an API. He's going to be teaching how you use an API, how the logistics of the internet work, how to get data from the internet, how those requests are structured, all of that cool stuff. So that does bring up an important note of we are off next Monday for Memorial Day. There is no class on Monday, virtual or in person or anything. So you got a day off. And then I believe Juneteenth is not far after that. And because that is now a federal holiday, we also have that day off as well. So one thing to note there is if you go to Canvas, if you do not use the schedule that is up at the top under general resources, schedule and YouTube links is in here. And that has our schedule, not only like the names of all the classes and what we're working on, but also the breakdown of like the outlines and the video transcripts and all of that stuff. So no class on the 30th. And then the following week we have set up as a project week. So you're going to get more practice with your JavaScript. This is primarily a review week before we dive into React part 1. So Christy, to your point, if you've got concepts that you would like to recover going all the way back to the beginning of the program, if you're like, I just never got inline, I don't understand how CSS inline works, that's what I want to recover, that is something that we can definitely do during this project week. But we're going to kind of be combining all of JavaScript plus what Ryan taught, and getting more practice. So I believe Ryan is planning on doing an API with the New York Times. We're going to practice with the Owen Wilson WoW API. And so we're gonna get that working as well. I don't know what that screen just did. Okay.
What's the API again?
API, great question. Application Programming Interface. And the API is basically how you can get your code talking to someone else's code and get data flowing back and forth. So the primary use of APIs is the process of getting data from the back end, the database and the servers, into your front end code. So Ryan will be diving into that next week. Then we've got a project week, and then we head into React. And React is all about making it easier to integrate our data that we're pulling in from our API, storing it and updating it in the front end without having to write a whole bunch of vanilla JavaScript. Vanilla JavaScript just meaning JavaScript without using a framework. The most common JavaScript frameworks are going to be jQuery, which is a little bit dated and is falling out of favor, React and Angular. On the front end, those are the dominant ones. And then there's an, I don't want to call it an up and comer, but Vue.js is the other common one there. But we'll cover all of that in the intro to React and start diving into it from there. Any questions about schedules? Again, we are off on the 30th and then on June 20th for Juneteenth. There will be no class then, but I know I've crunched Ryan down from I think 3 weeks to 2 weeks down to 1 week on the APIs now. And I didn't want to take Memorial Day from him. So Ryan will come in on Tuesday and he will be here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then also on the following Monday. Which I think will give you guys a perfect opportunity to ask him questions and go over where you're stuck on the New York Times project. New York Times is the point where it starts feeling a little bit more real, when it starts feeling like you're understanding the full part of how an app works. And I think it is a pivotal moment going into the back end in React in terms of, hey, this isn't just writing code anymore. I can actually start to build things here. Any questions on any of that? Need to find a way to take my iPad and mount it like above my laptop screen so I'm not looking at you guys over here. Again, this is linked in Canvas under general resources up at the top, and a couple other good things in there like the Zoom link I'm sure you guys all know about, scheduling one-on-ones with me and all of that stuff. This week, I am going to start hounding you guys about scheduling one-on-ones for your capstones, checking in on your progress, seeing how all of you guys are doing there. Those messages will start coming over Slack. So a good reminder for everyone, if you don't have Slack installed on your Mac with notifications turned on, that's a good idea. The other good idea is install Slack on your phone because we do try to not spam you in Slack. So you can adjust your notification settings and go from there. Any questions on any of that before we jump into the weather? Okie doke. So on the weather, first things first, we need to adjust our Ocean City, New Jersey here to show multiple location options. As someone who just did a cross-state move, I would love to be able to pick a different location and see the weather for that location. So a note here is that we are going to mock up this data, right? We aren't actually making an API call. We aren't pulling in live data, but we are starting to take our data, which is currently all in our index.html, and storing it in a way that makes sense in our JavaScript, so that we can update our HTML based off of whether something changes. Weather pun not intended there, but appreciated. So first things first, we've got our div class bold, our Ocean City, New Jersey 08226. What I'm going to do is I am going to move the microphone so I can type comfortably. Okay, I'm going to, in here, I'm going to make a new select. I'm on line 36, depending on what version of the code you have. You may be on a different one. If you do not have a final version of this code, I should have pasted it. Let me just take this whole thing and put it into Slack so you have it in case you need a starting point. Okay. So I'm going to come on my line 36. I'm going to put the select tag in, and then I'm going to show an option. And that option is going to start out as Ocean City, New Jersey. And before I get too far, I'm going to save. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to make sure I've got my drop down going on here. Now, of course, I only have one option in here, so let's add a couple others. So I'm going to say Syracuse, New York, 13202. And let's say, let's go for Silicon Valley. I don't know the downtown zip though. I think it's close to that. And 3 options should be a good starting point. So I'm going to save. I'm going to come over here. And of course, I get my options. What would be the next step in towards making this work?
Were we supposed to add JavaScript and then like a grab it, yeah, and then maybe do an on click or something like that, or drop down?
Yep, you're totally on the right track. So we're going to come over, we're going to make a new file called script.js. We're going to just add a console log in here that says hello world. We're going to save that, go back to our index.html, and then all the way at the bottom, doesn't really matter where, but let's just do it right before the end body tag. We're going to add our script source equals script.js and save that. And when we come back over here, of course, when we right click and inspect and go to the console, we should get our hello world there. So I'm going to take one more step and then I will launch a poll and we'll see how we're doing. Next step is we don't really want it to be an on click because we don't really care when someone clicks on this drop down. We care about when they click on a value. So what kind of event are we going to hook onto to make it so that when they pick a value, it's going to update?
Change,
exactly.
Don't know. I'm trying to fix something.
So before we can do the change on the event listener, we need to tell it what we want that event to be listening on. So what we're going to do is we're going to say document.get element by ID. And the ID that we're going to use on that is called location. But this isn't going to work unless we go back to our index.js and go up to our select and add an ID on this called location. So we're going to save that. We go back to our script.js. Now that we've got the element by the ID of location, we want to add an event listener. An add event listener takes a parameter. And Christy, to your point, this, because it is between the parentheses, it is an argument because that's when we're calling it. So arguments and parameters are not actually the exact same thing, but people will use them interchangeably. So if you hear me say parameter, it may actually be an argument and vice versa. It's a parameter when we are defining the function, when we are making our own function, it's considered an argument when we're actually using the function to execute it or call it. So in the add event listener, what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, when that get element by ID, the location, when it changes, we want you to run some code. But we don't want to get too far here. We want to just see that it's working. So we're going to console log out, it changed. And I'm going to save it, come over here, change it, and I get my it changed in the console. But now we need to go one step further. It's great that we know it changed, but we need to know what it changed to. So we're going to come over here, and instead of logging out it changed, we're going to log out the event target value. So again, let's see what happens here. I'm going to save. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to change my location, and it says event is not defined. Okay, when we get an error, we don't go to Max's code and immediately figure out where yours is different. We're going to start listening through to what the computer is trying to tell us, right? EVT is not defined. Okay, let's look at our code because it's telling us it's on line 2. The problem's got to be on line 2 or somewhere above it. We've only got 3 lines of code, so hopefully it's not too hard to find it. But what we have going on here is the event. Okay, what's the event? That's the change, right? And what we're trying to do is look at the target of the event, trying to figure out what that happened on, and then pull the value out of it. But it's not saying target is not defined. It's not saying target of something is not defined. It's saying EVT is not defined. Well, EVT is our event. Where's our event coming from? Well, it's coming from the event listener, which means when we execute that change function, we need access to the EVT that the event listener is providing for us. So now when we save that, go back to our code and switch it, we get San Francisco CA 94109 logging out. So I'm going to stop there. We're going to launch a poll and we're going to see where we're at.
Why did you put that console log out initially? That's the way to see if it's going to show up in your.
Exactly. Yep. The only reason we did that console log in the script.js was to test to make sure this line of code was working. So we totally could have just skipped that step and gone right into this one. But I can't tell you how many times I've been like, I've been programming for a decade. I know all of this stuff. And then I get like 40 lines into my code. And then I'm like, none of this code is working. And it takes longer to backtrack it and figure all of that out. So better to test often. Go ahead, Stephanie. Thank you, Karen.
When
You want to
I
share your screen?
yes, please.
Go for it.
It's something supposed to. You said something was supposed to happen over here because when I change the drop down, nothing shows up down here.
Yep. So first things first, we're going to go back to your code. And on your above line 1, add a or down on line 4, it doesn't really matter. Add a console log that just has like test in quotes. And just refresh the page. Okay, so test is showing up. So what that's telling us is the problem is not with the script tag. The script tag is actually loaded in and the test is showing up. So we know the problem isn't there. That means the problem has to be going on with our add event listener, right? So let's go back to your code and take out your console log test because we know the problem isn't there. So what we're doing is we're saying document get element by ID. So the ID on the select has to have the ID of location on it. So let's go to your weather.html. And on the select, you've got your ID of location. So that is not the problem. So let's go back to your script.js. Now I'm actually confused as to why that isn't working. Save and try it again. I wonder if it was just like a delay on your refresh.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sometimes it takes more time to figure out that you did everything right than to figure out what you did wrong.
That's okay. I even had Zach look on it at it. He's like, yeah, I don't know, ask him back. So thank you.
Throwback to Latonia's class, you may want to turn on autosave. That is totally a personal preference thing. Karen was messaging me about it. If you go to code preference, I'm not sharing my screen. I wasn't in Zoom. If you go code preferences settings, that's going to pop open this screen here. And then right at the top, commonly used, there's a file autosave. And you can say after a certain delay or when a focus changes. I don't like the on delay because Prettier sometimes runs when you don't want it to run. But I do think it is worth saying, hey, when you change to a different focus, so in other words, if you switch to another file or you switch to another application, the focus of whatever you're working on is going to change, and that's when it should save. So I'm going to try and turn this one on and just see how it is. I don't know how it works in WebStorm, which is the text editor I use at work, but let's give it a try and see what happens. So totally optional if you want to turn that on, but that may save some of your refresh issues.
I have a question.
Yep.
So wait a minute, because I had to rearrange my screen. I can't, I'm having a hard time seeing your code. So can you go back, because when you did the, when you added the other cities, I couldn't see. So I went and got my glasses.
Anyone else having a hard time seeing this?
So
the other thing you can do, Christy, is if you pull up the live share, you should be able to click in there and hit Command+, and that will blow up the text a little bit.
okay, so I was just trying to see, so you added select ID location, and then there's just options around just that area of text. Okay.
Correct.
Change that. Okay, I just gotta change that part and then.
I had a quick question. I did just see you in like something in the settings. I missed that trying to catch up typing.
Sure. So in the, I didn't mean to share my screen, or stop sharing my screen. In VS Code, I went to preferences and over to settings, and then I just turned on auto save on focus change. This is totally optional, but it may solve some of your problems of like forgetting to save the file or you know, spending a couple minutes and not figuring out like why it's not working, and it turns out you just had to refresh. I'm going to try and put it on focus change and see, but as a developer, I have gotten judicious about my Command S because I know that when I hit Command S, my Prettier is going to run. So there are times I don't want to save until I got everything coded out, and then I want Prettier to run. So this is totally like a personal preference of how you want your auto save to run.
Because sometimes pretty be throwing me off. I'm trying.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes you want to like get it all done and then say, okay, now Prettier, I'm ready for you. And that's how I use my save, is I have like auto save off. And then when I'm like, okay, I wrote out like 4 lines of code here, Prettier, now go. Right. It's like deploying your Pokemon. You're like, go Prettier, go. So this is totally personal preference and not something that I'm like suggesting you do, just saying, you may want to try it and know how to get to it to turn it off if you want. It's a lot like the extensions I showed a couple weeks ago with like rainbow brackets and all of that stuff. Some people find them helpful. I prefer not to develop with them on, but I'm not telling you not to use them. I'm just showing you what those options are.
Oh, okay, great. Because Mine was like that, but I thought you had changed it.
Yep, no problem. I gotta switch out to another microphone. We got 9 votes in. I'm hoping to get to 10 because that seems to be a good threshold for everyone. So I'm just waiting for one more person and then we'll keep going. The conference room in the microphone hasn't been used in person, so I have to keep on rotating through the microphone so you guys can hear me.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say you might want to take it home with you.
Yeah, I charge it up.
Okay, I'm 10.
Okay. Everyone good? Any final questions? Wait, I'm almost there.
I'm looking at your live share. Why is the Fahrenheit and the emojis highlighted? What were you doing with that? Nothing.
They shouldn't be.
It's cool then. I would continue.
Well, we select, it was highlighted because we're using Fahrenheit in America, I guess. You chose Fahrenheit as your, so if you go on your page, I think, is that what you talking about, Nicole?
Yeah, it looks like you guys were messing with it, so.
Right, so see how Fahrenheit is highlighted?
Uh-huh.
But that's because we made it bold, because we were using Fahrenheit to let you know what it was in.
Are you talking about it being highlighted in VS Code, or are you talking about it just being bolded in the browser?
It was bold in VS Code, but it's not a big deal.
Oh, yeah, we haven't touched any of that. The only HTML we've edited is 40 through 44, and then also putting our script tag down here in the bottom.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is now we've got this problem of, well, let's dive into our data. So this is a good example. Oh, let me end this poll. Okay, so we've got a lot of data on this page, and this is a very common problem of saying, hey, we've got all of this information, and someone may send you an Excel sheet and say like, hey, make this work. And in JavaScript, we've seen all of these different data types, right? We've seen, to review, arrays, we've seen objects, we have seen strings, we've seen numbers, and we've seen Booleans, which are true, false values. And all of those get about an amount, all of those get equal use in JavaScript. It's not like you can say you use numbers 90% of the time. It all depends on the data structure. So looking at all of this data, what would we want to use to store all of this?
Object.
We want to start with an object, yep. And what kind, we're going to say const weather data, because we never want to call something just data. What kind of data is it, right? We don't want to either say const weather, because then it's like, okay, well, what weather are you talking about? Are you talking about weather on a specific day? Or are you talking about weather at a specific location? So you want to name your variables as descriptively as possible, right? So we're going to say weather data. Now, what do we know about objects? What kind of data do they store?
Whatever you want them to.
What are the 2 keywords when we think of an object that we should be thinking of?
Value.
Key and value. So our keys are going to be the thing that we look up this data by, and then the value is going to be the data itself. So what do we think our first 3 keys should be?
Elements, maybe?
No, the
temperature.
don't know the vocabulary well enough. Let me think.
The cities is what we want, right? Because when we think about our interface, when we're over here and we change one of these, this has to change, and all of our weather has to change related to it. So we've got a lot of data that we need to store, but what are we going to be looking up this data based off of? It's all going to be based off of our location that we have selected. So each one of our locations is going to get a key. So our first key is going to say Ocean City. And Ocean City needs to store a bunch of data with it as well. So all of that data we're going to store in another object. And then we are going to say, hey, we also have Syracuse. And then we also have some data about San Francisco. Now, because we are using a space in the key, object keys are always strings. So we always use a string here, and because I've got a space in it, I have to put it in quotes. But because Syracuse does not have a space in it, we can actually define it without those quotes. That is going to be optional. It would work either way, but we need to use quotes if our keys have a space in them.
Syracuse is spelled
It
wrong.
will matter. So keys are case sensitive. So Syracuse with a capital S is different than Syracuse with a lowercase s. So
Now,
we're
wait.
going to start with, you have a question, Christy?
Yeah, so, okay, so Syracuse doesn't have quotation marks. We know that.
Correct. It is, however, spelled wrong. So Syracuse doesn't have quotation marks because the quotation to tell it it's a string is optional when you are defining a new object if the key you are using does not have a space in it. So we
Also,
have to
only
use
because,
the quotes here
because
because it has a space.
Okay, and then tell me why we use the, what is it called? The colon in after Ocean City and Syracuse. Why do we use that?
We always use the colon to differentiate the key from the value.
Okay, so that's a key value. Okay.
Correct. The key is going to always be on the left side of the colon, and the value is going to be on the right side. Now, while object keys always have to be a string, object values can be any data type. So those could be objects, those could be numbers, those could be anything. So to get started, I actually changed my mind. To get started, we're going to make each one of the cities have a different temperature up here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say in Ocean City, it is almost Memorial Day. It's going to be a beautiful 70 degrees. In Syracuse, it's not going to be 90 degrees like it was going to be on Saturday. It's going to be a nice 45 degrees. And in San Francisco, it is consistently 65, no matter what time of year it is. So we're going to get started with that. Now we need to use this weather data in our on change. Well, it doesn't really make sense to have our weather data be after the on change. We really want our weather data to be at the top of the file. And that's because, hey, we're going to be referencing weather data inside of this function. It makes sense that all of our data, the thing that we would want to change, is closer to the top. So I'm actually just going to cut and paste these just so we have them in the right order. So now what do we want to do on this change? How do we write code in here that's going to say, hey, based off of something, do something else?
I have a quick question. Is a little bit backtrack. So you only put those curly brackets just to show us that there was a space for the number there. We don't need the curly brackets though.
You don't need the curly brackets now. We're going to kind of iteratively build our data. So eventually we'll be switching back to those curly braces, but for right now, you do not need them. They should just be numbers.
Okay, thank you.
So what are we trying to do? Someone try and take a stab at pseudo coding this out. What are we trying to get this event listener to do?
Change when you change the target the value when you change the key.
Yep. So what we want to do is based off of whatever gets selected here, we want to use that as the key in here to get out our number, and then eventually take that number and update it here. Okay, so let's do that. Let's say we are going to get, we already have the event target value, right? So if I save this and I come over here and I change it, we get San Francisco CA 94109. Does anyone see a problem right off the bat? We've got our key, San Francisco CA 94109, and then we're looking at it here.
The temperature didn't change.
Well, it's not, we
State-
haven't even
state
gotten
and
to the
zip code.
temperature yet. That's the exact problem, is that we want just San Francisco out of that, but we've got some additional data. Well, I don't want to really remove that data, but I do just want it to return just the city that we selected. So this is an awesome example of sometimes we need to modify our HTML data structure in order to get our JavaScript data structure to line up with it. Now, of course, I could come in here and add in the key and make it match, but what instead I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my index.html, and remember, option takes an optional attribute. So by default, if we don't put a value on our option, the value of the option is going to just be whatever the option itself is. But oftentimes we will want to present something to the user that will be different than the value we actually care about. So in here, we can add a value of Ocean City. We can add a value of Syracuse, and we can add a value of San Francisco. So now in our script.js, when we event target out the console log out the event target value, when I switch to a different one here, now I get just Syracuse. Okay, now I click on another one, I get San Francisco. So I'm going to come in here, and instead of console logging out just the value, I'm going to move that into a const that says selected city equals my event target value. Now, how would I go about using selected city to get out the temperature itself in my console log? Yep. So what do I start with?
Key, and then dot the city.
I can't really hear them in person that loud.
Oh, then dot. Select it. Hold on.
Can you hear Larry better now?
All right, so you went to get the location. When it changed, and put that in the event value for the selected city. So selected city. Oh, shit. Dot value.
Undefined. So let's take a step back. Selected city is working. San Francisco shows up, I change it again, I do Syracuse, I get Syracuse. So we always start at the top level and work our way down. So the cities are here, but what are those cities stored in?
Their keys in weather data.
Their keys in weather data, exactly. So let's take it a step further out. Let's look at our weather data. And now, if I click on one, now I get everything, but I only want this selected city. So what do I do here to get into the selected city?
Dot select the city.
Oh.
Undefined.
Okay.
Well, let's take a step back. If I do weather data dot Syracuse, now when no matter what one I pick, I get 45 out.
All right.
But we can only use that dot syntax when we don't actually have a dynamic value, when we don't actually try and pull it out of a variable. What's happening here is it says dot Syracuse. I'm going to go look for quite literally the word Syracuse and pull it out of the object. But whenever we want to dynamically pull something out of an object, instead of using the dot syntax, we need to use the square brackets, and then we could put it in quotes here and say Syracuse, and this would still work. Or if we omit the quotes, we're able to put in selected city. And now when we come over here and change it to Syracuse, we get 45. And when we change it to another one, we get, ooh, changed to Ocean City, we got 70. So there must be a problem in, I did not spell San Francisco correctly in my object. Okay, now it's working.
Like, what is that considered? Like,
This is called square bracket notation.
yeah, I know what it is. But
Right.
what is it? What's the term of you? Because you're putting it in those brackets. So why are you? Because that's the
Because we want selected city, the value of selected city. We're not actually trying to look for the word selected city as a key in our object. We're looking for the value of selected city, which happens to be Syracuse.
okay. So like weather data is the target,
The object.
the object, and the selected in the yellow bracket. Those are considered the.
That's saying, hey, use a dynamic key. Go actually look at what selected city is. Selected city is coming from our event target value. That actually has the word Syracuse in it. So what we are doing by using these square brackets and not putting selected city in quotes, we're saying, go look up Syracuse, go look up whatever is the value is in selected city.
Right. I guess my question is what is the like if you were just to write this out prior to plugging in weather data and selected city, what is the yellow brackets considered? Like, I'm just trying to understand. Like,
So
yeah, like
it's not an array. It's just there are basically three different ways of accessing this data. We could say weather data.Syracuse, and we would get that weather app. We could say console log weather data Syracuse, and these two lines are exactly the same. It is preferred when your key does not have a space in it to write it out this way. That is just the preferred way of accessing it.
Because the selected city, is that why you put it in the yellow bracket?
Correct.
Okay,
Because we're trying to say, hey, we're not looking for the key called selected city. We're looking for a key that has the value coming in, which happens to be Syracuse, right? So these two are exactly the same. This is preferred because key does not have a space. However, if you wanted to get out Ocean City, ooh, see, autocomplete was trying to help me. It's going to look at me and be like, what's going on with city? There's a space in there, I'm confused. So what we need to do instead is console log out weather data. And because it has a space in it, we put it in quotes. And those quotes are saying, actually go look for the key up here of weather Ocean City and get the 70 out of it.
Sorry, one more thing, just so say like if all the cities were just single hit, one word, and you did that console log of that selected city, would you have to put it in the bracket?
You would, because if you do this as a dot, what it's doing is it's looking for the key called selected city. So there is no selected city key in this object. So what you're doing by using those square brackets is you're saying, hey, if this is in quotes, I'm going to literally look for the key selected city up here. But because it's not in quotes, I'm going to go get selected city from the event target value and drop it into here. Any questions about that?
I have a different question, I think.
Yep.
So when I click on my drop down, it just adds it up all 45 and it's not like switching to my 70 and my 85.
Do you have selected city in brackets and not in quotes?
So it has to have a console log. I thought console log was only for when we are trying to like see if it's all right or not.
So if you don't console log it and just take it here, what it's going to do is it's just going to say weather data selected city 45. What would you like me to do with it? Oh, nothing. Okay.
Oh,
So what this console log is doing is it's saying, hey, take the 45 and shove it in the console so I can actually see it.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, so final step here, and then we will go on break. We've got our selected city, and now we're getting the right number out. We go to Syracuse. Whoa, we got a whole bunch of things coming out. Let me just comment out some of these because these are all just examples. So the only line you really need is line 13. So I go here and I go into the selected city and I get 65, and I go into Syracuse and I get 45.
Click on console.
So what is going to be our last step here?
So are we gonna const parentheses, weather data, brackets, selected city?
What are we trying to do with that number?
Display it.
Right,
Display it. Where are we trying to display it?
in the console.
Nope, we already have it displaying in the console,
Or the
Um,
temperature in the output.
right up here.
in the
Okay, in order to be able to do that, we have to be able to hook into our index.html, and we already have an ID on it called today's temp. Isn't that convenient? So I'm going to come here and copy it, go back to my script.js, and I'm going to say document get element by ID, and the ID I want is my today's temp. Then what do I want to use to update it?
Dot,
What am I trying to update?
The
the
inner
weather
H-
data.
No,
The
No.
inner
Oh, the
HTML. And
inner-
what am I going to set that inner HTML to? Well, I'm going to set it to my weather data of my selected city.
Oh, okay. That
So
makes,
I don't need to console log it out anymore because I'm using this data right here. And I'm saying, hey, go document, get the element called today's temp. Once you get that today's temp, which is coming in as this whole thing, whoop, not that whole thing, this whole thing, then get the inner HTML. We don't care about the style properties. We don't care about the other attributes. All we care about is what's inside that span tag. That's the inner HTML. What do we want to set that to? That's going to be our equals. We're going to set it to our weather data. Okay, weather data is this whole giant object. What do we want to set it to? Oh, selected city isn't in quotes. So we need to go up here. Selected city is coming from our event target value. That is going to come from our event. That's coming from the change of the location. Oh, that location is going all the way back to the value that is provided right here. Okay, you selected Syracuse. We're going to go to Syracuse and we're going to get 45. 45 is going to become this whole thing right here. And where are we doing? We're sending that into our inner HTML. So if I save that and come over here and load it, 65, and if I change it again and go to Syracuse, I get 45. And Ocean City, and we're good. So
so,
before we go on break, I want to just do a quick poll, and then I will extend break once we hit that spot.
I have a question.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead,
can you,
Christy. What do you want me to share, Scadia?
can you just show me what it's supposed to look like on yours? I'm not live
Yep.
sharing.
Yep, on here at 70, if you're in Ocean City and you switch to Syracuse, it should go down to 45, and then San Francisco should set it to 65.
Okay, thank you.
And code, really, believe it or not, ends up just being these 5 lines here, plus this line 6, 7, 8, and 9. So everything we just did was 9 lines of code. But if anyone does not understand any of the lines of code on here or why we did them, just let me know where and I'll explain through it again.
I just forgot my script. My
So-
script.js. JS, can you
Yep. Just going to be this line right here.
So, so when we Oh my goodness, I made that too big. So when we dot, okay, so when we dot inner HTML, that means that we're in JavaScript, we're referencing back to something that's in HTML. And then when we put script.js in our HTML file, that means that we're putting that there so that if we reference something, so the dot inner HTML, what are we putting in HTML that's pulling in? Am I miss? Maybe I miss the connection back to, or maybe I'm over.
Today's temp.
Right.
Okay, so here, let's go through that flow, because that's a good question. Our HTML goes and it runs everything, right? And it goes through and it happily adds in our today's temp, and it shows all of this information, and it thinks it's off the hook, and it gets all the way down to the bottom, and then it says, oh crap, I've got some JavaScript, I've got to go execute in here. So it goes to script.js and it starts at the bottom. Oh, I'm sorry, it starts at the top. Why would it start at the bottom, Max? It starts at the top and it says weather data. It's an object. There's some keys, there's some values in here. I don't really care about it, but I'm going to save that in memory in case we need to reference it later. Okay, now we're going to go get the document, and now we're interfacing with some HTML, which is the document object model, the DOM or the DOM. Go get the element. What element do you want us to get? Location. So it goes back into our index.html, it goes to the top, and it tries to find the location, which is the select tag that we added right here. So now it says location. Okay, now it's like, all right, I got all of this. What do you want to do on this select? This select, we want to add an event listener. Okay, there are all different kinds of events. There's on click, there's on change, there's on scroll. What do you care about? What we care about is when that select gets changed. Okay, what do you want to happen when the select gets changed? That's going to be this whole function in here. So what we actually care about is we want to know what it got changed to, what the value of it is. So we go, hey, go get the event. The target is going to be the select, and the value is going to be whatever value gets set in by the option. And then we are going to store that in a const called selected city. Now, okay, what do you want me to do next? Skip over all of this stuff. We don't need any of it. It's commented out. We just use that as an example of how we can get access to our data. Now, what do you want to do with the selected city? We want to go back to the document. We're still in JavaScript land, but now we want to get the element today's temp. So we go back to our index.html, we scroll up and we find today's temp. That get element by ID is giving me that whole span. But what we say is all we care about is the inner HTML. So now we are just getting the 48 that's in here. But when we're in our script.js, we've got an equal. And the point of the equal is to say, hey, take whatever is on the right side of the equal and set it into whatever is on the left side of the equal. So we have selected city that's on the left side, that's what's going to hold it, but whatever's on the right side is what's going to get stored in it. The same is true for our object. Weather data is on the left side of the equal, what gets stored in it? This whole object. Well, in an object, the same principle applies. Hey, Ocean City's on the left side, this time it's of a colon instead of an equal. What's going to get stored in Ocean City? Whatever's on the right side, which is 70. So what we do down here is we go document get element by ID, today's temp, we pull out the whole span tag. Then in the inner HTML, we're saying, hey, pull out just the inside part of the span. And what do we want to go inside of that? Whatever's on the right side of the equal. What's on the right side of the equal is weather data. Okay, we go up to weather data and it goes, what do you want out of weather data? We want the selected city. But because selected city is not in quotes, it knows, hey, go get the value from what we stored up here. Now event target value is going to go into selected city. It's going to say, hey, Ocean City was selected, so pull out 70. Now, if we wanted to, we could take this event target value and put it in for selected city and just comment this out. And this code, believe it or not, runs exactly the same way.
Okay.
So either one is acceptable here. I'm gonna leave it the other way because I actually prefer it to be more descriptive, right? I think that this personally, this combined with this is a better code because it's easier to read, right? It's easier to say, hey, get today's temp, get the inner HTML, go up to the weather data and get the weather data for whatever the selected city is. So even though that this is 2 lines of code, I actually think that this is easier and better code to read because it's more easier to understand what the event target value is. It's the selected city. However, I know there are certain developers and even other instructors who would disagree with me and say, hey, it's better to have all of that in one line. There's no reason to put it in selected city if you're just referencing it in one place. Just do it all in one line like this one. So totally personal preference there. Either one is completely fine to use. All right, we've got 11 votes in. I'm going to stick around just in case whoever voted I'm lost needs a little help. If not, we will go on break and see you guys at 7:30.
I just also noticed. Oh, somebody else talking. Oh.
Go ahead.
I just you can go ahead because it's probably gonna take Twitter.
Okay.
Oh no, I
Christy,
was
go.
just saying that when you hold, like when you were moving your mouse, when you hold your mouse over certain things that you typed in, things come up above it to help you reference what it is. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just having aha moments. That's all. I'm just figuring,
Good.
seeing how things come together. So okay, that was just what I-
Good.
I had to travel, so I'm lost. Sorry.
So what I would say is look through this code and see if you have questions about this code itself. Because we only have a couple lines in here, I think it's okay to copy and paste it. But I would just read through it and let me know if you have any questions about it.
And then you know how you open the script and it has a closing. Would you put anything in between that ever?
Yeah, it's a great question because normally what we would do is like if we just said script source equals like script.js, we would just make it a self-closing tag, right? Well, browsers for whatever reason, no idea why, do not like self-closing JavaScript tags. Anything else can be self-closing, but JavaScript tags in particular, they're like, no, we want the closing script tag.
Okay.
No idea why, but what you could also do is put a script in here and say console.log test. Now, even though it's a index.html file, because it's between 2 script tags, your browser is actually going to run that as JavaScript. So you could, if you're like, oh, I just have like this one little quick thing, right? I don't want a whole separate JavaScript file. I need 3 lines of JavaScript to run, and I am out of here. You could put your script tag in there, not put a source in, put your JavaScript in, and call it a day. And that is not discouraged, but whenever you've got like several lines of JavaScript that you're working with, you don't really, it's like the same thing of using a style tag, right? You don't really use your style tag and put all your CSS in there. It's encouraged to move it to a separate file so you don't have one massive HTML document. The same goes for your JavaScript, right? The browser is doing the same exact thing. All it's doing is pulling in that script tag and essentially dumping that whole source and running it in there.
Right, so if you had one function that needed to be run and that was it for your
Then you can do it
JavaScript
that
file,
way.
put it in between the script tag.
Yep.
And you wouldn't need the separate.
Yeah, so something that I'll put in the script.js does, I'll just throw in there if it was like 1 or 2 or 3. Okay.
Yep. Great question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? A whole bunch of things in chat. I hope I wasn't missing anything.
No, they were chunky.
Okay. Does anyone want to try and read us through our code that we have as a refresher? Because I know the 25-minute break. Anyone want to take a chance at reading through the code and trying to describe what it's doing?
I guess I can wing it.
Sure. Go ahead and share your screen just so we can see your cursor as you're kind of talking through it.
1 second. I'm waiting for my other monitor to come up since I move location.
I agree.
Come on, screen. Are you waiting on me? I was waiting on you.
Yep, go for it.
Okay. All right. So if you go over to our script.js, it's basically saying that our const weather data equals, well, the ocean city, Syracuse, and Jamaica, and we also have the degrees over here. Is that what you're kind of asking for? Like what?
Yep, you're doing great.
And then the document dot get element ID with the parentheses with location is basically saying go into our HTML and get the ID of location, and then the event listener, I forget what that one is, but you know, that one's gonna go to is a string, so it equals change, and then that's just the I don't know actually parameter.
So let's pause there for a second. Get element by ID location is pulling it out from the HTML.
Mhm.
The first parameter or argument in that get element by ID is location, right? So it's a string and it's saying, hey, the ID that we're looking for is location. Now JavaScript is like, what do you want to do with it? So if you notice, we can keep on chaining these things. We can say document, what do you want to do with the document? Well, dot get element by ID. Okay, what do you want to do with that new element by the ID? I want to add an event listener. Now, an event listener is, they're all different kinds of events, right? One of the events is a change event, but we've seen click events, and we can do scroll events, and we can do all different kinds of events. So it's like, what kind of event listener would you like to add? And we're going to say a change. Okay, that's the first parameter there. Now, what's the second parameter? Well, that's going to be the function that is going to run whenever that change happens. But there's additional information that's coming in with that function. And so we also pull in the event. The event itself is coming in. And now it's like, great, what do you want to run? So we create our new arrow function and we do our curly braces there. And then we say, okay, what do we want to do whenever that event happens? It's going to fire off this event listener and provide the event itself to us. So from there, go ahead.
And now we have,
keep going.
oh, now we have our const selected cities, and then that is basically, actually, I'm not sure. It's gonna gather this information right here, and then.
Nope, not yet. So selected city, because it's on the left side of the equal, that's just saying where we're going to store it. So that's just setting up a storage location because it's on the left side of the equal. The right side of the equal is going to the event, which is coming up from line 11, right? Our event listener is coming in from, oops, sorry, trying to get to annotation, is coming in from right there. Yeah, you got it. This event is getting passed into the function. And what we're doing is we're using the event from over here and then digging into the target, which is going to be our actual location select here. And then it's pulling out the value from that. And once it gets to the value, it's going to store it in selected city for us.
So Max, the event itself, is that the change?
The event itself is the change, yes.
For every change you add, you put the event.
Exactly. Whenever we have, so JavaScript is what is called an event-driven language. In other words, whenever we have an event that happens, that event could be a click, it could be a scroll, it could be a letter that's typed in, it could be you click into a text field, it could be that you click out of a text field, it could be that you hit a key on your keyboard, right? When we think of events, we should think of like, hey, what's going on with this page? What's something that a user is interacting with? And whenever they're interacting, that is an event that we can capture and listen for it. And when that event actually happens, then we give it this function and say, anytime this event happens, tell us the details of what that event is, and then go run this function based off of that event.
Okay.
So then we just finish it up and we say, hey, go get the document by the ID, today's temp. And then we don't really care about the whole ID. All we care about is the inner HTML inside of it. It's going to be the left side of it. And then the right side of it is like, what do you want to set that new inner HTML to? And we're going to say, we'll go up to the weather data, which is coming back up to this section, and then get the selected city. Well, selected city is coming in from our event target value. So it's going to go up, it's going to get Ocean City, and then it's going to send that back down to here. And that's when we're going to get 70 and set that into our inner HTML.
Random question. Do we have a like an ID for select the city, or we just know that it's a select the city? I'm not sure.
No, we don't have an ID of selected city. We do have get element by ID location. And that location is what's linking it in to know that the event is happening on our location ID.
Okay, thank you.
So the right left equals the right, basically after you provide an event.
Correct, yeah.
Running an event.
When the event runs, it's going to run the entire function coming in here. So the event itself is providing access right here. And then the function, all the code that runs when that event happens is going to be in our curly braces. Any questions? Chris, you've got your hand up.
Oh, I'm not muted. Okay. Can I show you guys something?
Yep.
Your screen. I think it's this one. So I just want you to okay, so right here. Can you are you guys seeing my VS Code?
Yep.
So like right here, when you click on this, you see that it says returns a reference to the object with a specified value of the ID attribute. And then there's this one. So this is telling us that so it says this method HTML element, and then it says appends. So I'm wondering if this stuff, like when we're working on this by ourselves, if we read this stuff, this should like what you like the words you keep saying, these are the words, right? Basically. So I guess
I thought I would come up with different ones just to spice up your vocabulary.
You need to
right. So if we hover over these things, if we hover over these things, they give us like a whole description. So I guess I never noticed that, or maybe because we're trying to move so fast, but I just thought that I should point that out. I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but I think that is helpful to read because it says like, see right here where it says element ID, and then in that it says string. So then that means that whatever's on the other side of that, so location, so element ID, and then it has the 2 dots. So the location is a string?
The element ID location, yes, that is a string because it's in quotes.
Okay, and then, right, because that's like good to know, because you say things like strings and, when we have the different, so see right here, it says property. So
yep.
I thought that it was
property. Property is another synonym for key.
Right, so and then it has the colons and then it has the number. So I just thought
Yep.
it was helpful to, I don't know what made me hone in on this today, but it just thought it would be helpful to everyone so that when we're in this section and you're saying things to us, there's information right there that tells you
Yep.
what this stuff is. That's all. That just kind of made me. That's all. That's all.
Christy,
Christy, fix that code.
can you put a quote at the end of change, please?
Where?
By the event listener where it says change, yeah, put a quote
Before
next to change.
before the
No, the
Before
whole
the
time
comma.
I was talking, y'all was looking at my mistake and y'all wasn't listening to what I was saying.
I
Huh?
listen, I process everything.
I heard
you
everything
said.
you said, Christy.
Wait, so where does it
You
go?
hovering over those
Change?
things, let you know what they do, and that was eye-opening for you today.
Where am I putting it? Because it's not one on the other on Max.
Pull it back onto your pull it back onto the other monitor so we can see it.
Where it says change,
Uh-huh.
you need to close the quote right before the comma. You got an opening quote. That's why you got the red.
You saying a comma, not okay.
I said put a quote there
put a
between
quote
change and the
before the
comma. Yeah,
Oh wait, now I did something I
you
wasn't.
still need the comma,
Wait, okay.
Double quote.
but I promise I heard everything you said. Then save it.
Okay.
I was just thinking it though, Nicole.
'Cause I was
All
wondering
right,
why
I
it's
got
red.
it. Okay.
All
I
right.
just thought that was some great information because especially right here, because it gives you a lot of details. When
You can't see the class, but there was a full out riot here of everyone going, the quote, just put on the quote.
Okay, I'm done.
But yes, very good resource to share. Thank you for sharing with the class. Hopefully that is helpful. The only caveat I will add to that is some people read documentation and it clicks for them, right? And that's like their light bulb moment and they're like, the documentation is what they needed to push them over the edge. There are other times that people read documentation and it just makes them more confused. And that is also okay. If you are someone who reads all of that and you're like, I know what each one of those words means by its own, but when I read it in a sentence, I'm now even more confused. There are people like that, and that is okay. There is some really well-written documentation, and there is some documentation that goes so in depth that you're like, I'm just trying to learn the basics of the language, and you're telling me this advanced concept of how this runs under the hood. So take documentation with a grain of salt. If you're finding you're going fine in the class and you read the documentation and you're more confused, that's okay. If you're reading the documentation and you're hovering over it and you're like, that's why Max keeps on saying it, do all the hovering, keep on hovering and reading all of that stuff.
I do got a question.
Yeah.
Why do we use get element? I think you said this the other day, but why do we use get element by ID as opposed to query selectors?
Query selectors tends to return arrays. And then you just have to go into the array and make sure you're working on the one that you want to be working on. So query selector is good for like, hey, I would like to go update all of my buttons, right? And so when you do your document query selector button, when you get your buttons back, instead of just being able to say like, hey, add an event listener, you have to loop over all of your buttons and then add the event listener to each individual one because it's in an array.
Okay.
So there's nothing wrong with using that. It's just easier when we're looking for one specific thing to put an ID on it and use it. But there's nothing wrong with using the query selector as long as you know, hey, what's coming back from this is an array. It's not just the one thing that I'm looking for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me share my screen if I can find Zoom. Here we go. Okay, so we've got all of this working and that's great, but we have some more fun we can do here. The only thing that's changing here is our temperature. I would like this precipitation, humidity, and wind to change. And then I would also like rainy and my icon to change. So all of that data has to come from somewhere, right? Because this data is going to change based off of what location we select. So how are we going to modify our data up here to store more than just the temperature.
The value in object.
We're going to make the value an object. So it's an object, so we're using curly braces. Excuse me, if it's a number, we just type in the number. If it's a Boolean, which is a true or false, we just type in true or false. If it's a string, we use a quote. If it's an array, we use our square brackets. And if it's an object, key value pairs, we're going to use our curly braces. So in our curly braces, what are some of the keys that we will want to store?
Temperature.
Yep. And I think we said that was 70. What else? Precipitation chance, humidity, and wind. So we're going to say wind is going to be 10. We're going to say humidity is going to be, let's say 88. And our precipitation is going to be 25%. Now, why am I not putting these in quotes?
Well, let somebody else answer.
There's no spaces?
There is no space, you got it. So if I wanted to say precip chance, I would have to put this in quotes and then say chance. But oftentimes when we're structuring our data in JavaScript, we try to avoid our spaces in our key names because we want to use this dot notation because it's preferred. So oftentimes, instead of seeing it written out like this, we'll use camel case, which is the first word, and then any following word, we make a capital C. Now it is not only easier to read this as precip chance, but we can use our dot notation because there is no space up here. So we're going to do this for all three of our cities.
You don't gotta write out precipitation though, if you didn't do precipitation.
As long as we refer to it everywhere else in our code as precip chance, then it's fine. And not at all because I can't spell precipitation on the first attempt. Okay, Syracuse, we're going to make it 40, and it's going to be windy, and there's going to be no humidity, and the precip chance is going to be 110% because it's Syracuse. And San Francisco, we're going to make it 65, and it is going to be 5-mile-an-hour winds and no humidity, and it never rains in San Francisco, so 0% chance. So I'm going to save all of this. And I would encourage you guys to type all of this out by hand, only because you need to practice with the colons and the numbers and the keys and all of that good stuff. So I would encourage you guys to type all of this out. I'm going to save. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to change my location. And all of a sudden I get object as my temperature. Believe it or not, I have been on production websites that we use every day, and I have seen object show up on the page. What is JavaScript trying to tell us, or what is JavaScript trying to do?
It is basically trying to return the whole object as opposed to a piece of it.
What we're doing, all of this code is still running. Hey, go get the event target value, get the selected city. Okay, once we go up to the weather data, go get the selected city. So we come up here, and now instead of 70 coming out, we're getting this entire object here. And the way we can prove that is if we just take this line of code and throw it in a console log, when we come over here and change our city, we get this object, and we know it's an object because of the curly braces, and here are our keys or our properties and their values. So if we click into this, we will actually expand it out and see the 4 things that we set in there. So now what we need to do, instead of just get element by ID in our HTML weather data selected city, we've got to tell it, hey, this whole thing is an object. So the thing that we actually want to adjust in today's temp is the temp coming out of that object that we now have access to. So when I save that and come back over, when I change my temperature, I get my temperatures changing. Okay, all of that's good, but we've got all that other data in the object. We're gonna need to be able to hook into all of that. So I come back to my index.html, and what I have is all of this data, but it's not in a span. There's no easy way to update it. So what we can do is we can take our today's details and just rebuild it in our JavaScript. So we're going to take our today's details, and down here, we're going to get our document.getElementById, just like we've been doing forever. And we still want to target the inner HTML, but now we're going to use our friend, the template literal. So those are our backtick quotes. They aren't regular quotes. So that's the key above the tab. And what we need to do is we need to rebuild all of this. So I'm just going to copy this whole line and paste it inside of my backticks and then clean it up a little bit. So now instead of saying, hey, the temperature being 88, we're going to use our $sign and our curly braces. And what that's doing is it's saying, hey, anything in these backticks, we're going to just assume is a string. But whenever we hit the $sign curly braces, we're not going to put in the $sign curly braces. We're only going to put in whatever the value is inside the curly braces. Well, what do we want in there? We still want to go to the weather data. We still want to go to the selected city, but now we would like access to the percip chance. So if I save that, I come over here and I change it, my precipitation changed to undefined. Okay, well, that's not good. Precip chance. Here's the problem. I said weather data, go into our weather data and look at the selected city. When you're looking at the selected city, you look at the percep chance. Well, the selected city is event target value. What I need to do is say, hey, go to the weather data, then get the selected city, which is going to be up here, this whole thing. And now once you get that whole thing, then go into the percip chance. So in other words, we're saying do all of this first. And once we have that done, then get the percip chance. If we put it in here like the way we initially had it, it's trying to get the percip chance from our event target value. Well, that's just our city name. So what we're doing is we're saying percip chance is coming from this whole big object up here. We're not looking for percip chance in the string Ocean City. We're looking for percip chance within Ocean City within our weather data. So anytime we have another square bracket or a period, we're going another layer deeper. We're keep on peeling back this onion until we get to the data that we want. So if I save that and come back over and change it, my precipitation changes, and then we go to San Francisco and it changes again. So all we need to do is finish this out. I'm going to just copy this line and paste it for my humidity and change that here. And then I'm going to go to my wind and change that here. So come back over here, and now everything should change based off of what city I have selected. I'm going to leave this code on the screen and start a poll and see where we are at.
What is the, oh, that's the percentage, all right.
Okay, maybe I'm not going to start a poll because I'm missing something in Zoom. Where'd you go, poll?
There's
Oh, here it is.
there's a single quote in front of precipitation. Should we?
This one?
Yes.
That's a backtick. So above the tab key.
Okay.
And that backtick is what's going to allow us to use this template syntax, the $sign curly brace. And what that's doing is it's saying because it's in a backtick, assume it's just a regular string until we get to this syntax. And once we get to that syntax, stop whatever string you think is coming and go get this data out. And once you get this data out, replace anything between the $sign curly braces with that actual value.
But you don't need it in front of humidity and wind.
No, because this is all, it's a multi-line string. It's
Okay.
actually starting here and going all the way down to down here.
Okay.
Did something wrong. I made a mistake. Entity might be.
You must have fun rewatching these videos and then being like, oh, Max is just staring at the computer for 3 minutes. This must have been a hard one.
So there is.
If
a-
you're stuck on any line or don't understand any of this syntax, let me know and I can explain that part again.
There is a tick at the end of when though. There's the tick thing is, there is another
Yeah,
one.
so it's just like the string, except that this is the opening one for the string and this is the closing one for the string.
Okay.
So it's just like a string that's on multiple lines.
Yeah,
Okay.
precipitation right there.
I need to hover over all of this.
This precipitation right here is the word that's showing up right here. But because it's in the template literal, those backticks, without the curly braces, it's going to show up whatever I put in there. So what's inside the curly braces, that has to match with what's up here because that's what's actually trying to find the values and go through the keys and pull it all out. But whatever I put here is just going to be the thing that I want to show up in the HTML. Zach, question. You want to share your screen?
Yeah. I'm getting this message here, unexpected string.
On 14?
14.
Okay. Yep, so oftentimes the problem is not with the line that it's reporting, it's on the line above it.
Oh. Is that really why? Wow, okay, thanks.
I hate to tell you, but there are often times where I find an error and I'm really disappointed in myself when I understand and fix the error. Even with all of these years of coding experience, sometimes you find an error and you're like just so disappointed in yourself that that was the actual problem. We've got 6 poll results in, so I think you guys are still working on it. So we'll give you guys a couple more minutes.
Can I ask a question, Max?
Yeah, go for it.
Is there, so I'm noticing when the page starts out, it's got the default information that we put in the HTML, but it's showing Ocean City as selected. Is there a way to have it show the Ocean City information without manually entering it, like have it retrieve whatever the starting option is?
Christy, you're about to have a question answered, even though it wasn't your question. So yes, we definitely can. What we're saying here is, hey, get this document by the ID only when it changes. But we don't want to do it necessarily when it changes. We want to do it when the page first loads. So what we can do is anytime we put code outside of this function, which we know is between these curly braces, we know it's going to run right when the page first loads, right? If we do our console log test, our test shows up right away before we interact with anything. So what we could do is take all of this code and copy it, move it all the way out here, but now we're going to get an error because when we come over here, it says EVT is not defined. Okay, well, we're looking at this event Why is that event not defined? Well, there's no event happening. It's just the page load. The event happening up here is our change. So what we could do is, instead of getting the value from the event.target, we could go to the document, get the element by the ID of location, and then get the value outside of that. Now we've got our selected city here, and our selected city is going to console log out and update all of the details for us. So if we save that and come over here now, our precipitation is 25 and our humidity is 88 and our wind is 10. But when we look over here, the humidity is 86. So it did update for us. But now we just did a big no-no. All of this code looks like all of this code. We really should not be copying and pasting all of that. So what we should do is move this to a const, and that const is going to be called update HTML, and it's going to be a function. And that function is going to do all of this stuff. Now we say, hey, when the page first loads, just go update the HTML. And then we come up here and we say, we don't need any of this code anymore. All we need to do is update the HTML. So when we come over here and choose, we get our different values. And when we first load the page, it loads in based off of what is in our data. So what we did is we refactored this code to be in its own function. And now that it's in its own function, we are able to call that function when the page first loads and when the document changes based off of the element in the location. So Christy, that was how do I know to put it in a function? We just had it in this event listener. We didn't really have it in its own function because we needed that code to only run once. But as soon as we got to the point of needing that code to run multiple times, we moved all of the code into its own function and then can call that function on an event and also when the page first loads.
Thank you.
I'm glad that worked because all of your videos froze for a moment and I thought it just like was talking into the abyss. We've got 10 votes in, so unless anyone screams bloody murder, we're going to keep going.
Let me share my screen real quick.
Yep.
Mine isn't.
Go for it.
Where is it? So it's saying here undefined temp.
Okay, so go to 26. So it's saying weather data selected city. And so scroll up a little bit. Okay, so your weather data selected city is matching. Let's go to your index.html. And go up to that select tag with the options in it. And scroll over a little bit. So your value, you've got Ocean City, New Jersey 082226 as your value, but go to your script.js and look at what keys you're using. Ocean City NJ with no zip code. So whatever key you're using in your weather data needs to match your value in your, yep, well, that's the label. You care about the value itself.
In the parentheses.
Yep, that one. So that one should just say Ocean City NJ, and I don't think you have a comma in it.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? That value in there has to match the key that you're using for the object in your script.js.
Okay, in here. Okay.
Yep. Yep. Oh, you got a second O in there. We're headed to Ocean City.
Okay, so whatever is in here has to match in here.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, everything
So
else.
you've got commas in there, so you just have to add the commas in your script.js, and then that should work.
Ew.
Okay, it's progress. You're just targeting the wrong element on your on change. So in your update HTML, your scroll over a little bit. The get element by ID shouldn't be today's temp. It should be temp details, or I forget what we called it. Should be today's details. So no, that one should be today's temp, right? Because we're taking the temp and putting it into today's temp. But what
This
you've got all of there, that is today's details. With a capital D. Okay, now, what was that error? Cannot get, go back to the console. Now you've got cannot set properties null setting inner HTML. So go back over to your HTML and let's make sure that you have an ID of today's details. So go to your HTML and find where today's details are. And you got a capital T. Beautiful.
Thank you.
No problem.
I was like, "Ooh."
Chris, do you want to go next?
Yes, so mine, let me see. So share screen, my problem is a little bit different. So when maybe I'm sharing the wrong screen. So when I started out, I was trying to copy the index.html from the date, whatever, day through. So I had weather.html that was up here too. And so, but then I copied it over here so that I would have it. And so I've been, following along. So when I try to do this, it's saying weather at the top. I don't think I named it, but it's telling me, let me see, let me open this up.
So that weather is pulling from the title tag in your head. So there are two different things here. Index.html is the file that you're in right now. But over here, when it says weather, that weather is coming from the title tag in the head of the index.html.
So you see right here where it says live reload enabled, how do I,
that's fine. Here's your problem right here. Unexpected token on script.js line 2. So go to your script.js. And on line 2, what's that 70 doing there?
Oh, that was from the last time.
So take those temps out because we move the temp inside of an object.
Oh,
and then keep that trend going on Syracuse and on San Francisco. And save. I like the lack of red color.
Yeah,
and now you've got cannot read add event listener of null. So what that's trying to tell you is it says, I know what document is, and I know what get element by ID is, but when I try to add the event listener, I'm trying to add it onto something that doesn't exist. Well, that's what null means. So it says document get element by ID location. Let's go into your index.html and make sure that you've got an ID location. So you've got your select and you've got your ID, and it's a nice empty string.
Wow, okay. Yeah, that's when I didn't have my glasses. Okay, so now. Line 30.
So now read that error message. It's not just about knowing what line it's on. It's being able to read that set properties of null setting inner HTML. So that same kind of error message, right? It's trying to get an element by an ID and then set the inner HTML, but it can't set the inner HTML when it can't find the thing that it's looking for. So that's what that error message is trying to tell you, right? It's not just about the line numbers. It's about saying cannot set properties of null, meaning it's not the problem with the inner HTML itself. It's the problem of what it's trying to set the inner HTML on.
What does 17 mean?
17 means it's the 17th letter in that line 30 that the problem is at.
Oh, wow. Okay, so line 30.
Yep, so it's going to be today's details is the problem, not the inner HTML, right? Because it's saying cannot set inner HTML of null. That means that the inner HTML isn't the problem. The problem is whatever is null. So what's null is today's details. So go back to your code and see if in your index.html you have a today's details.
Right here.
Yep, that's today details. But I'm not giving you today. There you go.
Oh my God. So, okay.
So this is a good example of, yes, it's frustrating, but it isn't just about the line number. It's really about understanding what that error message is. It's easy to say, oh, it's an error message about inner HTML, but that saying cannot set properties null of index.html is telling you, hey, the problem is there. Okay, so now you take a step back. Your first two worked, your San Francisco one didn't. So this is, again, it's telling you cannot read properties of undefined reading temp. So let's go look at that code on 26. And it's saying it can't get the temperature for the selected city temp. So let's go back up to your weather data, scroll up a little bit. And San Fran, go to your index.html and go to the options. And I know where San Francisco is. I don't know where San Francisco is.
Oh my God. But what about, because so because it was doing it for all three lines, that one line affected the other three?
No, it was working for Ocean City and Syracuse. You only got that error message when you set it to San Francisco.
Oh my God.
So that's how I knew, hey, this isn't a problem with your JavaScript. It's got to be a problem with something in San Francisco.
Oh my goodness. It's like one little letter, one comma, one letter. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Whew.
I need to be next. There's something going on here.
Hey, man, quick question.
Sean Jay's gonna go, and then was that Scotty talking?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Okay.
You can go after Sean Jay.
My line, something in here is squiggly red.
Can you share your screen just so the people who are remote can see it as well? Okay. Do we have any errors in the browser? It's right behind your VS Code over on the right. Yep. So you need to pop open your console because your console is actually telling you where the problems are. So right click in there and inspect, and then go to console. And it's going to tell you document.getElementById is not a function. So on line 22, so go to line 22 and see the difference between that document versus any other time you use document.
Yeah.
Line 30 is correct. Line 22 is not.
And 33.
Yep. 33, you got the same capital D.
What the heck?
It's the little things.
Okay, so now you've got cannot read property. Yes, switch back to Chrome for me. Okay, cannot read properties of null adding event listener. So that's still on 22. But again, this is the same problem that Christy just had. So switch back to your code. And it's saying cannot on 22. The problem isn't with add event listener, it's with get element by ID location, because it's not finding the location. So that whole thing is null. So it can't add an event listener to null. So if you go back to your index.html, look for your location and make sure it's got an ID on it of location. So go to your select, and your select should have an ID of it, an ID on it called location. Yep. So save that and see if that works.
It's just going in order.
Okay, now you've got line 30, and that's going to be the same problem. So I'm going to let you try and solve that one on your own, and if you need more help, I can come back to you.
Can I go after Scotty?
Scadia, you're up, and then Nicole, I can help you next.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I think it's a small fix, Mac, because I don't have any errors in my console. I'm just trying to figure out why my precipitation is saying undefined on everyone except for Ocean City.
Okay, so let's go to your object.
Okay, 1 second. I know you taught us that trick with the bar and I can't remember what you said. Don't kill me.
To switch over to, if it's in a, oh, okay, that's fine. So your, what was the, sorry, what one wasn't working?
Syracuse and Baltimore wasn't working, but Ocean City was.
Well, it's not jumping out at me. Go ahead and scroll down.
Okay.
Oh, is it persip or precip?
Persip.
Okay.
Oh,
are you using? No, not there. Look on 40. Look at the end of 41.
End of 41.
You're using precip there.
Well, so that's correct, right?
That one doesn't matter. That one doesn't matter because that's just the label. The one that matters here is that is precip, but you're using persip up here. And you're using persip up here, but if you scroll up to Ocean City, you're using precip. And so that's why it's working here, but it's not working here or here.
Okay, I know it was a small fix, but couldn't figure it out. Thank you. I'll fix it. Thank you.
Nicole, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I have multiple problems. I'm still trying to figure out what it is. 1 second.
So when you have multiple problems, the best way to work on them is at the top of the console down, because oftentimes when you fix the first one, all the other ones will magically get fixed as well.
Okay.
So I would go to your console first and let's see what your error is.
Oh, maybe I'll go like this. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So
Okay,
this is
so
now
cannot read properties of undefined reading humidity. Okay, on 35. So let's go to 35.
in my HTML.
No, in your JavaScript.
Okay, here's 35.
Okay, so
Is it 'cause
you
it's capital?
are. Nope, that's fine. What you're doing is you're saying, hey, go to the weather data. And then once you get into the weather data, go into the selected city. But the selected city that you're trying to look at, this selected city here is a string, not an object. So you're trying to get the humidity out of the string Ocean City. So you actually did it right here on the wind. You just didn't do it right on the humidity. So go ahead and take out the dot humidity and that extra, yeah, you've got just 2 dot humidities. Yep, and then one more. Yep, there you go. That should be good.
Okay. Can you see this too? Can you see what I'm doing?
Yep. So it's saying cannot read properties of undefined of temp, but you notice it's only a problem on Kingston, Jamaica. So that means that the problem has to be somewhere in Jamaica.
So in this one or in my HTML? Because it says something about the HTML.
Yeah, you've got Kingston, Jamaica there without a comma. Let's go to your weather.html and make sure that your value in the option is Kingston, Jamaica. It is, okay, so that's not the problem. Go back to your JavaScript. The error was on temp,
Is it the
right?
2 capital, Jamaica and Kingston? No.
It's supposed to be the other way.
Oh, that's not, is Jamaica spelled right in both places?
Yeah, I think so.
The C over. Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure your Jamaica is spelled wrong in one of the 2 places.
Okay.
It's line 18, whatever the spelling is there, needs to match the spelling in weather.js, the value equals.
Yep.
Yeah, you've got your C and the I swap there. You had Jamasia instead of Jamaica. Oh, go back there. You accidentally deleted a quote. Yep, right where you're, there you go. All right, now that we're out at Jamasia, let's see if Jamaica's working.
All right,
There you
looks
go.
like everything is working. Thank you. Oh, I'll figure it out. Thank you.
Okay, I will stick around and help whoever is stuck, but there is going to be a homework assignment in Canvas. It isn't up yet, but your practice is going to be working with the object. You're going to want to add a new key up here that says forecast. And forecast is going to be an array. And in your array, you need to store each one of your days. And then based off of the data in the forecast, you need to update all of these days in here. So your homework is to, one, not only add the forecast data to your 3 separate cities, but then to use an array in that forecast, and you may need other data, you will need other data types in that array. And you're gonna get all of the data into this forecast here. And then once all of the data is here, you're going to write code in your update.html method to make it update the data that's showing down here. Any questions on the homework?
This is due Sunday.
No,
This is due Sunday.
All right.
so we're gonna put
Except for you,
5.
Nicole. It's due for you 9 o'clock.
I forgot today is Monday. Okay.
So the array is gonna have 5 days in it?
It's gonna have 5 days in it. You're gonna have to figure out what kind of data type you're using for each day, because each day is going to store the name of the day, the type of the weather, the you know, rainy, sunny, cloudy, whatever, and it also needs to store the temperature.
So we're not putting emojis in the array, right?
You can put emojis in for values,
And
but
then
they
what-
have to be in strings. That's a very good question. When you're using emojis, emojis have to be in strings.
But if, or could we change the emoji on the HTML?
Nope.
No?
You're gonna want to store that emoji inside your forecast, inside the day.
How many things can be an array? More than 2?
0, 1, 5 million, doesn't matter.
Oh.
I've
okay.
actually worked with arrays with 5 million objects in them.
Oh, God. Okay. Okay.
Good night.
Take care, everybody.
Good
Have a
night.
good one, guys.
Have a good one.
I gotta go tutor.